Thanks for joining us on Shannon's Club TV, where we examine the histories of road and race cars in Australia.
In each episode, we contrast our feature car's performance on the road and in competition. We'll also meet a proud owner and get the latest market news from the Shannon's auctions team.
In today's episode, we look back on what is still widely regarded as the quintessential British sports car, the MG T-Series Midget.
Although the TD was the biggest seller of the TC, TD and TF midgets, the earliest car, the TC, is the most historically significant. In June 1936, MG released the first T-Series midget, the TA, which superseded the overhead camshaft PB midget. It used a tuned overhead valve Wolseley 10 engine. Purists complained, as purists do, about the humdrum mechanicals, but the TA sold strongly due to its broader appeal and superior comfort. April 1939 brought the TB, this time with a shorter stroke Morris engine, bought out from 1150 to 1250 cc's and named the XPAG. The post-war TC was an improved TB. Despite a top speed of little more than 75, the TC had lively acceleration and great agility. So Mark, in an era of blundering US mobiles and dullard English cars, it's easy to see the MG's appeal, isn't it?
Oh, sure is, and particularly in its biggest export market, the USA. You know, during World War II, there were a lot of GIs stationed in the UK and Europe who were driving around in T-Series MGs, and they just fell in love with them. So the first thing they did when they got back home is they wanted more to drive around. Yeah. And this car is widely credited, or this series of cars is widely credited as starting the sports car craze in America. So
yeah, absolutely.
A lot of influence.
Terrific, thank you. Hydraulic brakes were a plus, but there were semi-elliptic springs all round. The ash frame, steel panels, 19 by 2.5 wire wheels, full flat windscreen and fly-off handbrake were very traditional. This quaintness appealed to many US customers, but the 1950 TD was designed to appeal to even more. The TD got independent front suspension, rack and pinion steering and 15-inch disc wheels to cope with bad roads. Its chassis was derived from MG's beguiling Y-type sedan. The grille was lower and the whole car was wider, some 4.5 inches so at the passenger compartment. What was meant to be the last midget, the TD Mark II boasted all of 57 horsepower thanks to larger SUs, and it also had a taller final drive. But BMC decreed the midget must soldier on so as not to take glory from its new Austin Healey. The resultant TF, launched in October 1953, was accepted in the UK but derided in the US. With its lowered nose section, the TF was the first midget not to have a side-opening bonnet or a real radiator cap atop its chrome grille. But 63 horsepower and a top speed of barely 80 were insufficient. For 1954, the XPAG engine was enlarged to 1.5 litres, but even the TF 1500 was a modest performing anachronism. Mark, how did these assorted midgets fare in motorsport?
Oh, they were very successful, particularly in Australia, where the MGTC wrote its name in the Bathurst history books. The T-Series MGs were affordably priced, easy to maintain, and responded well to modifications. As a result, the number of countries in which these cars competed in circuit racing, rallies, hill climbs and reliability trials is too vast to cover here. Even so, some of the many famous names to have started their careers in T-Series MGs included Carroll Shelby. The famous Texan's early success in a highly tuned MG-TC planted the seed for a celebrated career in sports car racing, culminating in creation of his legendary Cobra Roadsters and Cobra Daytona Coupes in the 1960s that famously beat Ferrari. Another famous driver to taste early success in the T-Series MG was Phil Hill. The American star won his first race in a supercharged TC, which led to a brilliant career with Ferrari, which produced a Formula One World Championship, 3 Le Mans 24-hour and 3 Sebring 12-hour victories. John, the common thread that weaves its way through the T-Series MGs is that they were a great starting point for a lot of future champions. They must have been a pretty good car to drive.
Well, they're a great starting point for champions. They're a great starting point for a performance car too, because they could so easily be tweaked up, as you said. They responded really well. Yeah.
And you had some experience?
I've driven a Y-type Tourer and a TF 1500, and I drove the TF 1500 only a few years ago, and it was for sale at a fairly expensive price. It didn't appeal to me as much now as it probably would have when I was 17 or 18.
Yeah.
By modern standards, it's very slow, but I love the look of it. I love the octagonal shaped instruments and all those at MG detailing. I mean, it's something you would treasure.
Yeah, and they mustn't have had any real major vices to be so successful in motorsport.
No, they didn't. And remember too, pretty low centre of gravity, so the handling was pretty good. If you had the right rubber on them, I'm sure they'd handle very well indeed.
Yeah, pretty basic but very sound engineering.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
good stuff. Many Aussie drivers also started their racing careers in T-Series MGs, which also served as the basis of many Aussie specials. Arguably the best known of this breed was a supercharged TC-based example that was built and driven with great success by Harry Firth. Without doubt, the T-Series' most famous local success, though, was Bill Murray's giant-killing victory in the 1947 Australian Grand Prix at Mount Panorama, Bathurst. The first AGP to be held after World War II attracted a colourful field, headed by Lex Davison's huge pre-war 7.6 litre Mercedes-Benz SSK and Alf Barrett's straight-eight Alfa Romeo Monza pre-war Grand Prix racer. However, Murray's stripped-down MGTC was still a hot favourite to win due to the AGP's handicap starting format. As the enthralling 38-lap race unfolded and numerous faster cars struck trouble, Murray's tough little TC surged its way into the lead on the final lap to win in front of 20,000 spectators. Given that MG had also won the event 5 times before the war, the British Marque's victory in the first post-war AGP was probably seen by many as business as usual, which just goes to show the high esteem in which these cars were held by racers in Australia and around the world. Remember to join the Shannons Club, where you can connect with other enthusiasts around the country.
Hi, my name's Steve Grant and I'm the proud owner of a 1955 MG TF 1500. What makes this car special to me is it's something that's not easy to describe. It's the same thing that makes a painting attractive to somebody. Sometimes beauty appeals to you. It just sings to you. The moment I became aware of this particular model of MG, it just sang to me. I just loved it. I purchased it in 1996. Since then it's had a total ground-up restoration. The upholstery was all redone, the chassis was stripped and powder-coated, every panel was stripped and painted. The engine was completely rebuilt and balanced. The specifications of the car, it is a 1500cc engine. It has a twin carburetor. It's called an XP-EG, made by MG. It's very light and relatively powerful for its weight. I've always loved convertibles. It's the fun of driving around with your head in the air and being free. It runs like a rocket on rails. It goes around corners without sliding. It's just a joy to drive. This car's been insured with Shannons for the last 2 years. I was blown away by their level of understanding what cars like this mean to people like me, and my experience is that these people know what they're doing, and it's been a pleasure to deal with. One of my favourite things to do with this car is to take my dog Hector for a ride. I had to make a special pod which extended the base of the seat out so that he could sit on it when he gets in. Hector loves the car. I love driving with the top down with him. He's my buddy, he's my companion. He comes to work with me every day. My future plans of the car are to drive it as much as I can. I really enjoy it. It's just fun to drive. It makes life more pleasant.
Shannon's National Auctions Manager Chris Borrabon is here with the latest market news on the T-Series MGs. Welcome, mate.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Chris, welcome. That's a multitude of sins, the T-Series midgets, TA, TB, TC, TD, TF 1250 and TF 1500.
That's
Now,
right.
in that pecking order, which is the one that the real MG diehard most desires?
Really good question. I think, we've sold, I guess the majority of them over the years at auction, and actually, it's quite good. We're actually still seeing a fair few T-Series coming up through Shannon's auctions, which is great.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it is fantastic, and I think we've come across different types of buyers. You've got the buyers who love the TC series, and then you've got the buyers who love the TFs, the last of the evolution.
And the TD's sort of caught in the middle, is it?
Sort of caught in the middle. That's it's got a market, but probably not as big as a TC and a TF. I mean, if you had to look at drivability, the TF 1500 is obviously the pick of the bunch.
I'm sure that's a factor in it now, because when you get back to the TC and the pre-war cars, the TATB, when in modern traffic, that can be a bit of a challenge, can't it? Now?
Look, I think, an original TC, with a 19-inch wheels on it, there's a lot of tram tracking. But, once you get past that, the TC is a fun car to drive. I mean, I've driven several TCs over the years, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. But, in the same context, the TF 1500 is a car that you can jump in most weekends and take out with your friends or family and have a ball.
Oh, there was a prefect at school who was wealthy enough to have a TF 1500, and I got him to drive me round the Melbourne Tan, and I wanted him to get it up over 80 miles an hour, and he did, indicated on the speedo. That says more about the era than it does about anything else. But that was quite an exciting sort of a car in a way, I think, a TF 1500, don't you?
And I think the style of a TF, I mean, we went from the TC, which was quite a beautiful little car with the big 19-inch wheels. It really had quite a look about it. And then the TD, I'm not sure. I think something was a little bit lost in the TD, and then the TF, I think it regained that gorgeous styling again.
I grew up thinking that the TD wasn't anywhere as good as the TC because of the little wheels and stuff, not quite the real thing, but I think now that would be a much better driving experience.
It is, that's right.
I think for a lot of people, the looks are probably still a bit compromised. Done for the American market, particularly, primarily.
So there must be. I mean, these cars were in production for almost 2 decades, separated by a war. I mean, it's a massive time.
Yes.
I imagine the restoration backup now for these cars must be massive, isn't it?
Look, I think there's great club support. The fact that we still see a few on the road today is a good sign.
It is.
So there is a good following, a good club scene all over Australia for these T-Series cars. So that's quite a positive sign. And I think that mechanical parts, the electrical parts, they're all readily available for those cars. And obviously, you get the right person to do the body work on the cars, and
away you go.
I think also, you think about the TC, in the late 1940s and what that said about the idea of a sports car, and you compare that with now, like it's almost a metaphor for the changing times. The TC just now seems prehistoric, doesn't it? 19-inch wheels by 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches,
pushback.
and a top speed of about 77 miles an hour.
Yes, downhill.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But equally, I mean, with the passing of time, that charm, I think, has grown. I mean, you talk about, if you're encapsulating the T-Series MGs, if you think about the quintessential British sports car, they're still right up there, aren't they?
It is, yeah. Look, I think the styling is, when you see a T-Series car go past, you do turn around. It is fantastic, and to look at it in a lovely car.
So, in summary, TF 1500, top of the tree in terms of desirability and price, and then you work your way down from there.
Correct.
TC after that, probably?
TC after that, and then TD, yep.
Very good. All right, Chris, thanks, mate.
No problem, guys.
Terrific.
And remember, for all the latest on the Shannon's auctions, check out the Shannon's Club website. If you want a lasting memory of the MG T-Series midget in competition, check out the huge archive at autopics.com.au. John, reflecting on this car, these never had big engines. They had quite small engines, but the emphasis was on power to weight ratio, wasn't it? I think that's a key reason why that car was so successful.
Well, you just look back at Le Mans results in the 50s, not just MG midgets, but you see so many unlikely cars doing really well. And the answer is, you look at what they weighed, and they weighed 600 or 700 kilos or something. If you take a car that starts out really light, you don't have to do all that much to the engine and the gearing and so on to make it into quite a projectile. And I think that's part of the appeal of the cars.
I think it was. I mean, you look at a lot of the British sports cars that we love from that era. They're
Yeah.
all, small engines, but very light, beautiful handling. They had a lot going for them, didn't they?
I think so, yes.
And I think the appeal, particularly of the T-Series cars, as the decades roll on, it just continues to grow. They never go out of fashion
Well, they're
or
evergreen, aren't
desirability.
they? They really are. Even if they're not all British Racing green, they're all evergreen. And very lovable.
Yeah, well said. We hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the charming MG T-Series midgets. Hope you can join us next time for Shannon's Club TV. Bye for now.